They say the strangest turns in life don't announce themselves. They slip in quietly, dressed like ordinary moments you almost ignore. I didn't know it yet, but the night I stopped at that gas station was the night my life began shifting in ways I couldn't have imagined. If you've ever believed that small acts of kindness can change a life, maybe even your own, then stick around. And if that idea resonates with you, go ahead and like and subscribe right now. Because what happened next is a story worth remembering. It was close to midnight when I pulled off the nearly deserted highway, my truck's engine rumbling low like it was as tired as I was. The neon sign of the gas station buzzed in the cold night air, its red, open, flickering like it couldn't decide whether to give up. My son, Liam, was asleep in the back seat, his head tipped to one side, mouth slightly open, clutching that frayed blue blanket he's had since birth. The dashboard light painted his face in a soft glow, and for a moment, I almost didn't want to wake him. But we'd been running on fumes for 20 miles, and the last thing I needed was to be stranded with a 6-year-old in the middle of nowhere. I stepped out into the crisp air, stretching my back, feeling the ache from a double shift at the warehouse gnaw at my muscles. The station was quiet, too quiet for the hour. Usually, there's at least one other late-night traveler filling up, or a trucker grabbing coffee inside. But tonight, it was just me, or so I thought. That's when I saw her. She was sitting on the curb near the side of the building, half in the shadows, knees pulled up to her chest. At first, I thought she might be waiting for someone. But then I noticed her shoulders shaking, her hands covering her face. Even from where I stood, I could see the glitter of tears catching the harsh overhead light. Her clothes weren't what you'd expect for this part of town at midnight. Tailored charcoal coat, silk scarf, the kind of leather boots that cost more than my entire month's grocery bill. Her hair was perfectly styled, but now strands clung to her damp cheeks. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just a case of someone waiting for a ride. She didn't look up, didn't move when I walked past toward the pump. I could have ignored her. God knows I had enough of my own problems to carry. My rent was late. The stack of medical bills from my late wife's cancer treatments was growing like an avalanche I couldn't stop, and my next paycheck was already promised to 3 different collectors. But there was something about the way she was trying so hard to make herself small, invisible even, that made it impossible to pretend I hadn't seen her. After starting the pump, I walked toward her slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay?" I asked, my voice low. She flinched slightly, like she hadn't heard me approach, and then shook her head without looking up. No words, just a quick, sharp movement. "It's late," I said, glancing around at the empty lot. "This isn't exactly the safest place to sit." She gave a short, humorless laugh that was half a sob. "Safe," she said finally, her voice cracked but steady enough to carry the weight of something bigger. That's a word I haven't felt in a long time. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not good at prying, and I've never been the kind of man who pushes someone to talk before they're ready. Instead, I offered the only thing I could think of, a paper cup of coffee from the machine inside. "Let me grab you something hot," I said. "If nothing else, it'll keep you warm while you figure things out." She hesitated, then nodded once. By the time I came back, she'd straightened up a little, but her eyes were red-rimmed, and she kept glancing toward the dark stretch of highway beyond the lot like she was expecting it to spit out trouble any second. She took the coffee with both hands, murmured a quiet, "Thank you," and for a moment, we just sat there in silence. I thought maybe she'd open up, tell me what had brought her here, but she didn't, and I didn't push. Instead, I told her I had a warm truck with a kid asleep inside, that she could sit there until she figured out her next move. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes were an icy green, sharp even through the redness, studying me like she was trying to read my intentions in one glance. Whatever she saw must have convinced her, because she stood, pulling her coat tighter around her, and followed me to the truck. Liam stirred when I opened the passenger door, blinking up at me, then at the stranger standing a few feet away. "Who's that?" he mumbled. "Just someone who needed a safe place for a bit," I told him, tucking the blanket back around his shoulders. She slid into the passenger seat, careful to keep her distance, her hands wrapped tight around the coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in her world. I didn't ask her name. She didn't ask mine. We drove in silence to the edge of town, where she finally asked me to pull over near a small motel. "This is fine," she said softly, already reaching for the door handle. She paused before getting out. "Thank you for not asking questions." I nodded. Sometimes that's the best way to help. She gave me a look then, half gratitude, half something I couldn't quite place, and stepped out into the night. The doors shut, and she was gone, walking toward the motel's neon sign without looking back. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I convinced myself I'd never see her again. People pass through your life all the time, brief, strange, unforgettable moments that fade into memory. This felt like one of those. I didn't know that by the next day, she'd find me again. And when she did, she wouldn't just remember my kindness. She'd rewrite the story of my life. The next morning started like any other, bleary-eyed, cheap coffee in a chipped mug, and the sound of Liam's cereal crunching loud enough to drown out the old fridge's hum. The sun barely made it through the thin curtains in our kitchen, casting everything in that washed-out winter light that makes the world look colder than it already is. I had work in 2 hours, another double shift that would drag past midnight, and my mind was already sifting through the usual calculations. How to stretch gas money, which bill I could put off this week without the lights going out. It wasn't until my phone buzzed against the counter that anything felt out of place. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail. People who call me unannounced are usually creditors, but something in me hesitated. Mr. Cole, the voice was crisp, professional. This is Marlene from the front office of Pine Ridge Apartments. Could you come by as soon as possible? We need to discuss something in person. Those words, in person, are never good. My stomach's sake. Ren had been late before, but I'd never been called in like this. Liam looked up from his cereal. Everything okay, Dad? I forced a smile. Yeah, buddy. Just have to run an errand before work. The office was only a short drive away, but with every turn, I felt that gnawing dread grow sharper. When I pushed open the glass door, the warmth of the small lobby hit me, along with the faint smell of cinnamon from one of those electric wax warmers Marlene liked to use. She stood behind the counter, but she wasn't alone. She was there, the woman from the gas station. But she wasn't in shadows now. No damp hair, no crumpled posture. She wore a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans, the kind of casual elegance you see in magazine ads. Her hair was smooth, falling over one shoulder, and her eyes, those sharp green eyes from the night before, were locked on me, unreadable. Mr. Cole, Marlene said, her voice carrying a note I couldn't place. This is Ms. Monroe. She asked to meet you here. I turned to her, my words cautious. You tracked me down? She smiled faintly. Yes. I hope you don't mind. I had help. She glanced at Marlene, who busied herself with a stack of papers, clearly pretending not to listen. I don't usually get followed home by strangers, I said. Her expression didn't waver. Last night, you didn't ask me anything. Not my name, not why I was there. You just helped. No conditions. No judgment. She stepped closer, her voice softening but losing none of its control. That's rare. I shrugged. Didn't seem like you needed an interrogation. Something flickered in her eyes then. Guilt, maybe, or the echo of whatever had broken her open enough to sit crying outside a gas station. I was in a bad place, she admitted. Still am, in some ways. But I went home last night and couldn't stop thinking about you. And your son. I stiffened. You know about Liam? Yes. I had my assistant look into you. She said it without flinching, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I know you've been raising him alone since your wife passed. I know about the medical bills, the foreclosure notice, the double shifts. Anger flared hot in my chest. That's not information you get to just. She held up a hand. I'm not here to insult you, Mr. Cole. I'm here to help. I almost laughed. Help? Yes. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder, laying it on the counter between us. Every debt you owe, medical, personal, mortgage, is in here. As of this morning, they're paid. Completely. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. What? You heard me. I opened the folder. Pages of statements stared back at me, each one stamped paid in full. My name was on every line. My balance, 0. I looked up at her, my voice rough. Why? Why would you do this? She drew in a slow breath. Because I know what it's like to lose someone. 3 years ago, I lost my husband. Not suddenly, like you lost your wife. His was a long, ugly illness. I watched the bills pile up until they felt like a second kind of death. And I learned something. The only thing heavier than grief is the fear of what comes next. You gave me something last night. A moment where someone saw me as a person, not a problem to solve. This is my way of giving that back. I stared at her, trying to find the catch, the angle. But all I saw was a woman standing steady in the middle of her own scars, offering me a lifeline I hadn't asked for. This isn't charity, she added quickly. Think of it as balance. You pulled me back from a ledge I wasn't sure I wanted to step away from. Now I'm pulling you back from yours. I swallowed hard, the air in the small office feeling too thick. You don't even know me. Her eyes softened. Maybe I don't need to. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the heater. Then she picked up her bag, glanced once at the folder still in my hands, and said, "We'll talk again soon." She walked out, the bell above the door chiming as it closed behind her, leaving me staring at the proof that my life had just changed, completely and without warning. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the letter in the mail that said there'd been a mistake, for the call that told me the debts were somehow back, heavier than before. But it never came. The bill stayed gone. The foreclosure notice never resurfaced. For the first time in years, I could look at my paycheck and see more than a desperate list of who would get paid first. Clara didn't disappear, either. She called, sometimes just to check on Liam's latest soccer game, other times to invite us to lunch at a place I never would have stepped into on my own. She never made it about the money. She made it about being present, something I realized she needed just as much as we did. One rainy Saturday, we were sitting in my small kitchen, Liam building a Lego fortress on the table between us, when Clara said quietly, "You know, you saved me first." I frowned. That night, all I did was bring you coffee. She smiled faintly. You gave me back the belief that people can be kind without asking for something in return. You reminded me that not everything in life is transactional. That's worth more than money, Ethan. It was the kind of thing that sticks with you, not because it's grand or dramatic, but because it's true in a way that feels rare. Months passed. My life didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight. There were still late shifts, still scraped knees, still the slow work of rebuilding. But it was different now. The crushing weight was gone, replaced by a strange, fragile kind of hope I hadn't felt in years. And every so often, when I'd catch Clara watching Liam with that soft, faraway look, I'd think about what she'd said, how I'd saved her without realizing it. It made me wonder how many lives we touch without ever knowing, how many quiet nights at forgotten gas stations are turning points in disguise. Sometimes, it turns out, the smallest act can echo the loudest. And sometimes, the person you stop to help ends up handing you back your life.